What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Bro History. It's Henry, Zamoda, Danny, Abdel-Jabbar. What's up, man?
Chilling, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I just recently saved somebody's life.
Get out, really? What happened?
So, walking up the subway stairs, and somebody tripped.
What?
Yes, they ate their, well, they almost ate their shit from the top of the stairs going down, walking down the subway stairs. And I caught the person.
Wow. Oh, was it an older person, a younger person? What's up?
It was a medium-aged person, probably
Medium
like
age?
30, 35 or so. And he tripped. He was just like, whoa. It was kind of funny because I kind of like heard it. It came out of nowhere, but it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And the guy tripped and he started tumbling down. And I was like, this guy's going to like just wiped out. And I was walking next to him. So I just pull out my left arm and I catch him. I clotheslined him so he wouldn't fall down. So he landed on the cuff of my elbow. And the guy's like, man, thanks, brother. It was
Was he going up or down the stairs?
He was going downstairs.
And you were going up?
I was going up. He was going down. And I caught him with one hand. Well, one arm. I didn't catch him with I can't catch a person with one hand.
I don't know. Maybe you can.
maybe I have huge hands.
The biggest hands. Look at these hands.
It's nice to save somebody.
Absolutely.
Now I can walk around with that moral superiority for the next, I don't know, 24 hours?
24 minutes, maybe.
24 minutes. I think it's already worn off.
It's faded.
Yeah, I cease to feel anything anymore. I don't feel a thing anymore. I did feel very good for about 20 minutes or so. I was like, that was a good thing I did. Thank God I have superior cat-like reflexes where I could have saved that guy. Because if it wasn't me, if it was anyone else, that guy would have been dead. But I saved his life.
Or at least injured at the very least.
Or at least an embarrassing video would have been taken of the guy falling. But nevertheless, I did save the day. So for that, everyone rate and review the podcast. Because, how's everything with you?
I can't say that I've saved anyone recently, so you're one-upping me there.
Well, I'm used to it. For everyone who doesn't know, I was a beach lifeguard for 3 years. Ocean lifeguard, not a pool lifeguard.
Ocean, right.
I wasn't a pool boy.
Yeah, you had to fight sharks and shit, right?
Not just fought sharks, fought
seagulls.
Octopi, seagulls. No, but I did have around 60 or so rescues over my time as a.
I didn't actually know that. That's crazy.
Ocean lifeguard, not pool lifeguard. Not a pool boy.
Good for you. Oh, it's a real American hero. Thank you for your service.
Not telling people to stop running because of the slippery floor. Yeah, I was a lifeguard at Virginia Beach for years.
That part I knew, but the 60 saves, that's nuts.
Yeah, I had about 60 saves. It was over, the years that I lifeguarded there. It's probably a little bit more when you think about all the other saves that I assisted on. But it was a pretty rewarding thing to do as someone who is college aged because it was just like a lot of responsibility to take in, and it kind of just sets you up like, okay, I had a job that I had to handle people's lives rather than like renting bicycles or something like that.
Yeah, it's in the name, lifeguard.
Lifeguard. All right, I'm gonna make people sick if I continue on anymore. All right, so we're actually last episode, we spoke about Ukraine, and I'll just be completely blunt. We had a pretty mixed response from the people who listened, from the feedback.
For sure.
To say the least. Most people were like, oh, Henry, what the fuck? Why didn't you bring up CrowdStrike and all this stuff with DNC?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it was a compromised organization? And then they were like, Danny's totally got it wrong on everything. I can't believe he trusts the mainstream narrative on CrowdStrike. I can't believe he doesn't realize it's a CIA coup. But the feedback is definitely nice to hear because, it's...
And there was some good feedback, too, to be very clear.
There was some good feedback, but, it's, the feedback that the ones that I've been bombarded with more so have been things that I missed to say, or I missed to counter your points yesterday or last podcast on Ukraine Gate and Russia Gate, because we kind of went all over the place. And we the last episode, if you haven't listened to it yet, we started off by talking about the history of Ukraine and the history that the end of the Soviet Empire and well, really the beginning as well, and how Ukraine became a geopolitical battleground. And I guess when we ended up getting into the actual Ukraine Gate, we fell a little bit off the rails. And I think what happened is that both you and I do come from very different narratives. And I'll be completely honest, is that, and I think I said this last episode as well, is that the whole Russia Gate, Ukraine Gate scandal,
all the gates
over the past 3 years since Trump's been president, it's something that I intentionally stayed away from. And the reason why I stayed away from these scandals, and I didn't do hardcore research, and it wasn't like my main MO when looking for topics and researching stuff, is because mainly the partisanship between both point of views really made me sick. You had one camp that was Russiagate, like Rachel Maddow, like the Russians are going to cause a polar vortex in your kitchen. She had a report like that, by the way, saying something about a polar vortex that the Russians were going to start, like just straight up Alex Jones shit. And I also saw that there was a lot of people who were recovering the story who were doing a very good job. So I was like, well, these guys are going to bring a lot more value into this subject than I ever could. So I'm going to concentrate on things like the Middle East and stuff like that. Also, not to say like there's a lot of other conspiracy theories on the other side. I don't want to say conspiracy theories because we're going to get into that. But there was also kind of like a big whitewashing of everything that Trump has ever done.
Right.
That turned me off as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a subject that I was just like, fuck this subject. It's just way too partisan. You're never going to change anyone's mind on this if they're kind of dug into a certain position. So why even bother? And I was more interested last episode to talk about Ukrainian history in general rather than, I guess, the Ukraine Gate. And I don't want to say I was caught off guard, but I guess a lot of my gaps in knowledge were exposed as far as the contemporary situation between the collusion and, whatever the fuck has been happening over the past 3 years. But I listened to your advice and to everyone who gave me feedback's advice. And I did some more digging and I've educated myself. So I do appreciate the feedback. And I got more, I guess I did some reading, and I found a lot of stuff I didn't know. And I thank the people who've actually sent me some articles. Now, Danny, how do you deal with the allegations that you're a mainstream shill?
I mean, that's people's opinions, and they're entitled to them.
I'm just fucking with you. But before we get started, let me tell you about the most useful app on my phone. So it's hard to find the time to sit down to read. And when you don't have free time, you can't read or work on personal development. There's this really incredible app that solves this problem, and I highly recommend it. It's called Blinkist. And Blinkist is really unique. It works on your phone or your tablet or your web browser. And Blinkist takes the best key takeaways, the need to know information from thousands of nonfiction books, and then condenses them down in just 15 minutes that you can read or listen to. Successful people like business leaders are well known for reading a lot of books. That Warren Buffett guy is always talking about, I just read for 6 hours. Well, he might just be listening to Blinkist for 6 hours straight, which means that he has just matrixed himself, when you get that sudden jolt of knowledge.
Yeah.
Blinkist is made for busy people like you. You want to get the main points of a book quickly so you can start using that information right away. And with its audio feature, Blinkist makes it easy to finish a book during your commute, or on your lunch break or while you exercise. 8 million people are using Blinkist right now, and it has a massive and growing library from self-help, business, health to history books. Blinkist has the latest titles from bestsellers list, as well as the classic nonfiction titles you always meant to read but never had time to. I listen to Blinkist usually on my subway commutes because the New York subway is hell, and I need some type of salvation from that. And with my long subway commute, it's usually I can jam in about 15 Blinkists, but it really is great. It really is great. Blinkist is really awesome because, like, when you think about it, when I read a book, I never really retain everything. Like, if you read a book, how often do you retain all of that information?
I mean,
well, you retain the key points of it,
right?
Unless you're like a person who's reading the footnotes of the book, you're not reading the entire. You're not memorizing it. Blinkist it nails that thing down, so you get all the key points and you can retain that. And it's also really useful after you read a book. You can just look at your Blinkist and be like, okay, these are the main things I read, and it'll bring back the memories. I listen to these books, and I highly recommend that you check them out. One of the first big self-help books I've read that helped me out in my career, my career in tech and sales and all that has been How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think that's a starter for anyone who's graduating from school who's getting into sales. Danny, what did you have? What did you Blinkist recently?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a couple of days now, and the first one that stuck out at me was a book by Yuval Noah Harari, Homo Deus. I had read his previous book, Sapiens, which is an absolute mind-bending, awesome adventure, like brief history of humanity. And this one, Homo Deus, was all about talking about the future. This is a brief history of tomorrow, and it was really, really interesting. And actually, I think it sparked my interest in just wanting to pick up the actual book itself and read it. So I think that's like a fun segue that Blinkist does.
Yes, with Blinkist, you get unlimited access to read it or listen to a massive library condensed nonfiction books, all the books you want, and all for one low price. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/bro. Try it free for 7 days and save 25% off your new subscription. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/bro to start your free 7-day trial. And you'll also save 25% off, but only when you sign up at Blinkist.com/bro. All right, Blinkist. Books, fast books. All right, so let's get back into it. So we kind of left off at a weird point in our last episode on Ukraine. So I want to just go over I want to start back at the transcript.
Yeah, let's
show us the transcript, Hillary. Show us the transcripts.
Yeah, we'll be doing a little bit of backpedaling, but hopefully this time we can get a little more context in it. So, just to recap, what are we talking about here? With this impeachment.
Oh yeah, I want to do a fair warning too before we get into this.
Okay.
This episode is going to be. We're recording this episode right now on Tuesday. And we're actually going to record the second part of this episode tomorrow after the actual impeachment inquiries. So we're covering the post impeachment and then the pre and the post, the pre and the post impeachment on one episode.
Inquiry,
so at one point we're going to have
it'll break. It'll be weird.
It'll break, and I don't know. Maybe we'll put a commercial in it. We should do that, right?
Yeah, why not?
All right, so.
Okay, so just recapping, what the hell are we talking about for those that didn't listen to the last episode? So we talked a lot about Ukraine. It had a crazy ass history, and post fall of the Soviet Union, ourselves and other countries have helped prop up that nation both for humanitarian and geopolitical reasons. Our particular geopolitical interests are mostly to stave off the Russians, right? We want a friendly neighbor on Russia's border. Take that as however you will, but that's kind of the reality on the ground. And then we come to our present day, and one thing to note is that we do support Ukraine financially and militarily, and there's an aid package numbered in the hundreds of millions of dollars there that was allegedly held up by President Trump in exchange for two particular points, and that was a inquiry into Ukrainian corruption, which we talked at length about in our last episode, and specifically around CrowdStrike, which we'll get into in a moment. And Hunter Biden, who is the son of Joe Biden, who allegedly evaded some justice there, and there's some shit going on there. So there was a perfect call, and that's the call that we're going to go over today again.
What do you mean perfect call?
Oh, it was quote unquote perfect. This is what Trump says, right?
Oh,
it was a perfect call, right? And we have the not word for word transcript, and we'd like to.
Word for word transcript.
The not
so
word
this
for
isn't
word.
the transcript.
Correct, right?
It's a summary of the transcript.
It is a memorandum is the actual word for it. But we're going to review that because I think a lot of people probably haven't already actually taken a look at that. And we're going to talk about some of the backstory for that. So let's just jump in. So we have this call. And I want to just, again, underscore the fact that this is not a word-for-word transcript. It literally reads in the front, caution, a memorandum of a telephone call is not a verbatim transcript of the discussion, right? This is mostly like notes and recollections and probably some word-for-word stuff, but the entire thing isn't there. And another point to point out is that there are some sections in this quote, transcript, which we'll refer to it as a transcript from now on, that have these ellipses, the ... Trump's favorite punctuation in Twitter. And there are some missing pieces in those ... We don't know what that is, but we can talk a little bit more about that. So now that we got that set up, right? I think maybe we should start by talking a little bit about CrowdStrike, and we can read the portion of this transcript that has to do specifically.
Well, let's just start from the beginning of the transcript. President, congratulations on a victory. We all what? Well, this is not his words. It sounds enough like him.
Yeah.
We all watched from the U.S. and you did a terrific job. Terrific. The way you came from behind, somebody wasn't given much of a chance, and you ended up winning easily. It's a fantastic achievement. Congratulations. Okay. There's no okay at the end. And then Zelensky, you're absolutely right, Mr. Why am I doing an English accent? All right. You're absolutely right, Mr. President. We did win big, and we worked hard for this. We worked a lot, but I would like to confess to you that I had an opportunity to learn from you. I'm gonna do like a overly excited salesman's voice. We used quite a few of your skills and knowledge, and were able to use it as an example for our elections. And yes, it's true that these were unique elections. We were in a unique situation that we were able to achieve a unique success. I'm able to tell you the following. The first time you called me to congratulate me when I won my presidential election, and the second time you're now calling me when my party won the parliamentary election. I think I should run more often so you can call me more often. And we can talk over the phone more often.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah. Well, I like politics. I can talk to you, Mr. Trump. You want to do Trump?
Yeah, sure.
You do Trump and I'll do Zelensky.
All right, cool. So that's a very good idea. I think your country's very happy about that.
Well, yes. To tell you the truth, we're trying to work hard because we wanted to drain the swamp here in our country. We brought in many new people. Not the only politicians, not the typical politicians, but we want to have a new format and a new type of government. You're a great teacher for us and in that. Okay,
so this part is super important, so I'll place some emphasis where I believe some emphasis should go.
So what part's important?
Well, I'll emphasize them. So he says, well, that's very nice of you to say. I will say that we do a lot for Ukraine. We spend a lot of effort and time, much more than the European unions are doing, and they should be helping you more than they are. Germany does almost nothing for you. All they do is talk, and I think it's something that you should really ask them about. A lot of European countries are the same way, so I think something you want to look at. But the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. I wouldn't say that it's reciprocal necessarily, because things are happening that are not good, but the United States has been very, very good for Ukraine. All right, let's stop right there for a second because I think that's the important point that I wanted to kind of underscore here. So first point I want to just as a matter of fact, you can take it as you will, whether or not you agree to supporting Ukraine, we do financially and militarily, and we're not the only ones. The European Union actually They do support Ukraine, about $16.5 billion in grants and loans for its reforms process since 2014. And in addition, countries specifically like Germany have
there's a lot of loans that go back
dollars.
into there's a lot of loans from the IMF that go back into like foreign banks.
Exactly, but in its specifically, Germany does pledge millions of dollars.
There's a lot of predatory lending that goes into Ukraine as well.
All right, there's also grants too. So let's be real. Grants and loans. If you want to talk about the loans and how they're predatory, that's certainly fine, and we can discuss that. But I'm also talking about grants, which is free money that you give to a country, and Germany happens to be a part of that, and they give millions of dollars in assistance. In addition to them, Japan, not even in the European Union, has given $3.1 billion in assistance to Ukraine since 1990. So I think, in this case, first of all, he's just wrong, like literally wrong. But I think if we're looking at this like a sales call, and I mentioned this in the last episode, I think that this is the setup. Like if you have if you're going in the camp of there was a quid pro quo, this is literally the line that's giving you this setup. He's establishing value for the U.S.-Ukraine partnership, and he's differentiating it from other nations, right? He's like saying, hey, our business relationship, this relationship that we have is really good. It's better than all the relationships that you have with other countries. He underscores this by saying how we've been very, very good to Ukraine. And he kind of teases what he's about to ask for in this respect when he says, I wouldn't say that it's been reciprocal necessarily because things are happening that are not good. Right? So he's presumably alluding to some of the stuff that we're about to talk about, like allegations that Ukraine or elements in Ukraine had something to do with Russiagate. So that's kind of the part that I really wanted to underscore. So just correcting the record there, other countries do support Ukraine. It's not just the United States.
Well, listen, it's Donald Trump, and he doesn't probably know how much much the EU is giving in loans to Ukraine.
Of course not. But I think it's more important to see.
Honestly, I can't. It's hard for me to look at this and just look at this part as any type of smoking gun or
no,
whatever.
This part isn't. But this is the setup.
It's a setup. But all right, whatever. Listen, we do a lot for you, and I can't say you do that much for us.
Well, this is the setup. It's important because, it goes on. But you can, unless you had other point to say on that, maybe you can read Zelensky's response there.
So, yes, you're absolutely right. Not only 100%, but actually 1,000%. And I can tell you the following. I did talk to Angela Merkel, and I did meet with her also. And I also met and talked with Macron. And I told them that they're not doing quite as much as they need to be doing on issues with the sanctions. They're not enforcing the sanctions. Not enough. They're not enforcing the sanctions. They're not working as much as they should for Ukraine. It turns out, even though logically the European Union should be our biggest partner, but technically the U.S. is a much bigger partner than the European Union, and I'm very grateful to you for that because the U.S. is doing quite a lot for Ukraine. Much more than the EU, especially when we're talking about sanctions against the Russian Federation. I would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next step. Specifically, we are almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes.
Ooh, javelins.
Yeah, all right. So we went over this last episode, but I want to go over what are javelins?
Javelins are a shoulder-mounted anti-tank missile, and they can be used in a number of different ways, but they're like a homing missile that you can carry on your shoulder, and they're fucking dope.
So right now, from what I've read, the Ukraine and they're trying to figure out a way to have a peaceful resolution within Ukraine, at least as far as like the inner turmoil right now.
For sure.
They're trying to have like some voting blocks in Ukraine that we can go deeper into this next episode because I don't want to spend too much time for this right now, But talking about that javelins is important because he's now bringing up this like, hey, we want to continue this relationship. We want to buy some javelins from you. We're ready to cooperate on the next steps. And that's kind of the important part there. He's saying we're willing to play a game. I think it's showing his willingness to comply. Right. And it also, I think, underscores that the fact that he needs our help and he's like willing to play ball there. Right. Well, let's go into the next section because this is a part where everyone's saying is that proves the quid pro quo.
Absolutely. And again, not a word for word transcript, so we don't know if there was anything in between this. But as far as this memorandum goes, literally after he asks to buy more javelins, this is what the president responds. I would like you to do a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike, ... I guess you have one of those wealthy people, ... The server, they say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on, the whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I'd like to have Attorney General call you or your people, and I would like to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, that whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Robert Mueller. An incompetent performance, but they say a lot of it started with Ukraine. Whatever you can do, it's important that you do it if that's possible. All right.
So this is the part where we got a lot of shit. So on this CrowdStrike situation.
Right. So let's talk about CrowdStrike for a second.
Let's talk about CrowdStrike because yesterday you said that CrowdStrike was they worked with the FBI.
They do. Yes.
They were hired by the DNC.
Yes, those both are true.
They were hired by the DNC, and then the FBI never looked at the CrowdStrike, and they never had access to.
Right. So let's peel this back.
CrowdStrike redacted a number of their reports multiple times.
Let's peel that back. Hold on. I'll give you a chance. Let's give people an opportunity to understand what CrowdStrike is before we start shitting on them. So CrowdStrike sells cybersecurity to they're a software company. They sell to big corporations, governments, global banks, healthcare, energy companies, you name it. Some of their big customers are Goldman Sachs, Amazon Web Services, MIT, and a lot of states and cities in the United States. These are the people that they sell to. They also help the U.S. government. Specifically, CrowdStrike tracked the North Korean hackers back in I think it was 2014. That's when they hacked Sony Pictures, right? And they were able to assist the FBI in finding out who had performed that hack on Sony Pictures, and it ended up being the North Koreans. Now, they went public recently. They're valued at $14 billion. And I guess very specifically, they gained notoriety, and this is the point that we want to debate about a little bit. They gained notoriety in 2016 when the DNC paid them to investigate the hack of their server. Now, CrowdStrike determined that it emanated from Russia. That's where it came from, right? The hack. And the company was one of the first people to sound the alarm about Russia's, quote, interference in the 2016 election. And that assessment was later confirmed by U.S. intelligence agencies. Now, we can talk a little bit about that in a moment. But, I think there's just a lot of conspiracies around CrowdStrike and how it handled that investigation. And just to lend a little credence to you there, and this thing that you're pointing out, is that the FBI, when they were investigating the hack of the DNC, they took a look at CrowdStrike's imaged servers. And so what that is it's not the server itself. It's literally a copy of the server, meaning they copy and paste the shit, send it over, and then they can take a look. Now, Comey testified in 2017 that it would have been better if the DNC gave those servers to the FBI. That's the DNC, not CrowdStrike, right? But the FBI was able to get the information that they needed from CrowdStrike. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and another big problem is that, so here's where the big conflict is that, listen, I don't know any of the technical details when it comes to investigating some type of hack or not. I do know that there's been conflict. There's been a lot of doubt on CrowdStrike and if the Russians actually hacked the DNC. There's been a lot of doubt by a lot of cyber security analysts. That being said, I'm not someone who's going to be able to look at the nerd stuff and come to a conclusion. But I will say this, that it's the founder and owner of CrowdStrike, or the founder of CrowdStrike, is a Russian anti-Putin guy. Correct. So, and it makes sense that if there's going to be a conflict of interest, if the DNC is hiring a third party company, that one with an anti-Putin president, to come up with a outcome that they want to happen.
Okay, I mean, and that's I think not totally unfair.
I think that there's a great degree of fair. I think it's a fair enough skepticism when it comes to looking at CrowdStrike's final results. And all right, I'm going to bring up another conspiracy theory because I cannot let this go. I can't let this go. But first of all, WikiLeaks, the conspiracy theories that the Russians hacked the DNC servers and they gave it to WikiLeaks, who then published it.
Right.
Julian Assange said it didn't happen. I generally trust Julian Assange.
Julian Assange said what didn't happen specifically?
Julian Assange said that it was a leak. It wasn't a hack.
Mm-hmm.
And Julian Assange alluded, and I'll say this again, Julian Assange alluded that it was Seth Rich who leaked the DNC emails to him. Seth Rich was murdered afterwards on a botched robbery. Nothing was taken. And this has been something that if you bring up the Seth Rich case, you're called a conspiracy theorist. You're called someone who's being insensitive to his family because his family largely denies that he was part of the leaks. And it's a horrible situation. And I'm not saying this stuff to create like some false conspiracy theory, but it's a legitimate question. You have a very, very famous publisher, a publisher of classified documents who's never had to retract anything ever, who, he's had kind of weird history with a law that doesn't really add up to me. I don't really know Julian Assange's full story of why the whole thing with like the condom breaking story, because that's what he was originally in trouble for, having sex with a girl with a condom, and he said he didn't break the condom. The condom actually broke. I don't even like thinking about people's sex life like that. Oh God,
they're coming for you, man. You're talking about the conspiracy theories.
Exactly, man. Whenever you start going down these rabbit holes, this is what happens.
Okay, so
let me finish. So Julian Assange, I don't want to get into his sex life, but he alluded that it was Seth Rich who gave him to that, and to come to the conclusion that it was Seth Rich and he was ultimately murdered for leaking that information is not far-fetched and not crazy, because the guy was murdered and nothing was stolen from him. It was a botched robbery. Nothing was stolen from him in DC at like 3 a.m. Like, just, it was a random act of violence. I just feel like the percentage of that being just a random act of violence, knowing what he did, or with the endorsement that he may have leaked the DNC emails, because he was a hardcore Bernie Sanders, and he probably felt very betrayed that the DNC intentionally. That's another thing. No one talks about the actual corruption within the DNC of them intentionally sabotaging the Sanders campaign.
I certainly do.
Come on.
I certainly
come on. You can't. You want to air out some dirty laundry, like you got to what was hacked was your corruption, and WikiLeaks published it, and you openly were going about pushing him as a Jew in some places and as an atheist, like not a real Jew in other places, because he's like an atheist Jew to certain parts of the South. The whole thing just screams corruption. I mean, look what I have respect for Tulsi Gabbard for stepping down, for treating them so poorly, and I'm no Sanders supporter. But if I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, I would just feel fucking cheated. And
right. And I think we're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
We're going
here.
down a rabbit hole, but I think it's important to highlight why people are very skeptical of CrowdStrike and the whole. And this is a conspiracy theory in itself, that Russia hacked the election. And there's a dissent on that topic. There's dissent.
No, I totally hear it, and I think it's fair to ask the questions. And in that respect, I think it's totally fair to ask the question about Seth Rich. And I'm not going to touch that, frankly, because I don't think there's enough like hard evidence to make that case. It's very fucking fishy. I'll say that for sure. But I'm not going to go so far as to like confirm or deny that particular one. But I think it's also kind of talking about that is a little bit of a distraction from CrowdStrike, just slightly, because you mentioned a point that I wanted to talk about, and that's that the CTO of CrowdStrike being a Russian. It's funny is that you hear conspiracy theories on the one hand that he's Russian and he's anti-Putin, and so that he has a conflict of interest there, and that's why he would want to say this was Russia. But I also hear this like similar conspiracy theories that actually he's Ukrainian, and when in fact he's Russian, So like
there was an incident in Ukraine where they had to be redacted on something like that. They screwed something up in Ukraine.
Yeah, but the point is that there's a lot of conspiracy theories circling CrowdStrike specifically. A lot of them are unfounded. Some of them are worth asking the questions for, specifically like the motivations of the CTO and whether or not that was compromising in that reporting and in the thing. But the point, though, is that they did give image servers, so copies of the DNC server to the FBI and 17 intelligence agencies, and they did independent independent research on that, and they all said that it was Russia. So while it's fair to ask the question about CrowdStrike and whether or not they had some motivations to say that it was Russia, I think it's also fair to counterpoint that by saying, well, 17 intelligence agencies from the U.S. claim that it came from Russia. Keeping in mind,
that's another thing where you're going to lose people, because a lot of people generally do not trust intelligence agencies out of the U.S. I mean, we're talking about agencies that perform coups on a regular basis. They performed coups, and I mean, let's just go back to 1953 in Iran.
All 17 of them, though.
That seems there has to be.
It's like Occam's razor here. Yeah, if the FBI said it, one thing. If the FBI and the CIA said it, another thing. But all 17 of them, you got to remember that these intelligence agencies are all, largely bipartisan. Like they don't have particular motives that are political. And if they do, it's
there's
a specific
there's
a specific agency or specific members of them that have political inclinations. But the fact that all of them at the same time can corroborate what CrowdStrike did, I think, would be a much larger conspiracy.
There's no doubt
that's kind of hard to prove.
There's no doubt that intelligence agencies have an interest in preserving the intelligence agencies and that bureaucracy where they stand. So it's almost like Scott Horton came up. This is going off the point, but Scott Horton I heard him say this in a podcast not so long ago, that the U.S. is becoming kind of like a third world country where presidents and politicians are like finding the intelligence agents and generals who are going to be on their side unless something goes wrong, just like a third world country goes wrong. I guess my main point is that it certainly seemed that, Chuck Schumer even stated, you mess with the intelligence agencies, then you're going to get screwed, that there is a deep-seated resentment in parts of the intelligence community against Trump. For whatever reason. It could be because that's kind of like the nail in the pen that I really can't figure out, because Trump has gone along with a lot of the policies that I think a lot of people were scared that he wasn't going to move further as far as preserving the war state. However, that could have been just a fear, or maybe it was like they couldn't get 99% or 100% of what they wanted. They only got 95% of what they wanted, and they wanted to get the last 5% because 95% wasn't good enough for them because of, his insistence on trying to create a better relationship with Russia.
Right. But you have to also remember that a lot of this is happening before he was president. Right. So those inclinations that, getting 95 and not the whole 100%, that's not until after. Does that make sense?
It's not until after
he already became president.
And you're saying that, wait, repeat that one more time.
Right, so you're saying there could be, some inclinations of the intelligence agencies to, I guess, undermine Trump because they didn't get that full 100% of what they wanted out of him, right? So they, align with the other 16, intelligence agencies as well as CrowdStrike in all saying that, yes, in fact, this came from Russia to undermine Trump. I guess that's kind of the narrative, right? The idea that a lot of people lose faith in the intelligence agencies and that this is all just one big conspiracy, which fair, I don't know. Nobody else knows. We can't really know the truth on that. I think it's very unlikely, personally speaking. But the point, though, is that he wasn't already president when these investigations started, and he was president when they ended. But to make the assumption that the the CIA and the FBI and all the other intelligence agencies had a bent out for Trump because he wasn't playing ball on their policy just doesn't add up, because he wasn't president at the time that it started, and he wasn't president for very long.
It would have been worse when he was running, because when Donald Trump was running, he was talking about creating better relationships with Russia, along with going against the mainstream policy on Syria as far as funding, moderate rebels. And so
I don't know, man. It seems like a bit of a stretch.
Before he was when he was running, there would have been a greater incentives for intelligence communities or any community that was bent on preserving the war state to fuck him over, essentially, because I mean, as we found out when Trump was elected president, he continued with a lot of the policies that Obama and George Bush put forward.
Right.
However, when he was running, he kept on saying they lied us into the war in Iraq. He went there under false pretenses.
Right. I don't disagree with that.
He made those statements that were very anti-traditional U.S. foreign policy, at least anti-U.S. foreign policy over the past 15 years. He would add a little bit of a caveat of, well, we should have just stole the oil if we went there. Kind of just speak out of his ass, like, well, we went to Iraq and didn't even steal their oil. What was the point of that?
Right.
That kind of stuff.
So let's
I don't think he understands that you can't just put a pipeline into Iraq and have it bring it back. But
well, right, let's put a pin in that, because I think we can agree to disagree largely on this one. Like, you can be in the camp that says CrowdStrike is a legitimate company and their findings were corroborated by 17 intelligence agencies, or you can be in the camp that says we think that CrowdStrike has ulterior motives and aligned with 17 intelligence agencies to falsify information that it came from Russia. Either way, there's no way to fully know at this point, right? So you can be in either camp, but I think this takes away a little bit from back to the transcript here and the fact that he's referencing corruption in this last part, right? Which is a big argument in support of the call being legitimate, right? But I think in my opinion, based on his understanding of CrowdStrike, I think he's kind of barking up the wrong tree here. He's not referencing other issues of corruption inside of Ukraine directly, and there are many instances of corruption that are still ongoing today. We talk at length about it in the last episode, but he does talk about CrowdStrike specifically here, right? I think personally, if there is a quid pro quo going on, he's at best wasting Zelensky's time digging into this conspiracy theory, kind of like how he wasted a whole lot of time, trying to prove Obama's a secret Kenyan Muslim. But I think at worst, though, I think he's extorting Ukraine with this congressionally appropriated taxpayer money.
Well, I don't see the extortion right here. Like, where it doesn't seem. I feel like the extortion's left for interpretation. Really, like I don't
and that's why I said
clear.
I don't see.
I don't. We're not, and I want to get through the entire thing, but so far, I don't see clear cut. Like, you better investigate this, or we're going to withdraw aid. It's maybe there's an insinuation, and I said this last episode, and I still, when we get to the Biden stuff, I think it's inappropriate that he's making this phone call at all. However, I don't see this as like that big of a deal. We can totally, we can totally get there.
I'm
like, okay, like, all right, whatever. So he called him to talk about the
fucking CrowdStrike, right?
About CrowdStrike.
So last thing I'll say on this, and we can get there. The point, though, is, and hopefully we can get to this in this episode, is that when we talk about the actual impeachment inquiry and some of the people that have been interviewed, they're corroborating the fact that before this call took place, the Ukrainians knew that if they don't do this corruption inquiry on their side, that they're not going to get the aid. And this is being corroborated. Specifically, Gordon Sondland, who we'll talk about later, he testified in front of the impeachment inquiry behind closed doors. He said, I never heard of any quid pro quo or nothing like that. And then later, after a few other people testified to the contrary, he came out and amended his thing, saying, "Yeah, okay, there's this one time that I talked to a Ukrainian official and said that this is you're not going to get the aid unless you actually say that you're going to investigate CrowdStrike." So context, right? But in my reading of it, before we got all that information, I think that he's like, let's play that out, right? Let's say Ukraine, Zelensky actually does do the investigation. There's no way in hell that he would publicly announce that he got information from Ukraine saying that CrowdStrike and 17 intelligence agencies in the U.S. were correct, right? Like, he's not going to say that. But he sure as hell is going to scream from the fucking mountaintops and say, oh, look, I found all this evidence from Ukraine that says that it wasn't Russia, right? I mean, that's...
Well, I don't know what he's talking about with the server thing about.
Nobody does, because it's in ellipses, like it's not a full transcript. We don't know what the hell he's talking about.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about with the server. But what I can tell you is that there were Ukrainians who openly bragged about meddling in the 2016 election,
and that's fine. But
there were Ukrainians who bragged about, like the guys who released the was he Sergei Lyshenko,
right?
That anti-corruption campaigner.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's kind of besides the point. Like, it's possible for Ukrainian people to have participated in that DNC hack, but that's not the point. The point is that he's asking them to look into this hack, not because he's trying to get down to the bottom of corruption, but because he wants to know, and he wants to vindicate himself that it wasn't Russia and that there was no collusion. He's fucking playing the old tunes, that this wasn't him trying to better Ukraine. This is him trying to better himself.
But let me just finish that point I was trying to make. Like, Lyshenko, the anti-corruption, he published a secret ledger that showed Paul Manafort's like off the book cash payments while Manafort was advising Yakunovich's Region Party.
Right. And
like after that, they were openly talking about like, yeah, we affected the election. So right. I mean, there were the suspicion that Ukraine,
well, I mean, Manafort's in jail now, so
I know.
Like, they got him on that.
I know, but I'm just saying that, like, there was a consensus within Ukraine,
for sure,
because of the government that was put in place after Yushchenko was basically kicked out of office through a coup. The new Ukrainian government was very, they were pro Hillary, typical U.S. foreign policy, or DNC foreign policy establishment, or whatever, because that was the same system that put them in place. And there was the big fear that when Trump became president, that he was going to not play ball with them anymore.
Right. I mean, I think it was a founded fear. But let's maybe jump back into the transcript. I think you're up here. It's Zelensky's turn.
Are we up to? Yes, it's very important for me.
Yep, that's the one.
Yes, it's very important for me in everything that you just mentioned earlier. For me, a president, it is very important, and we are open for any future cooperation. We are ready to open a new page on cooperation and relations between the U.S. and Ukraine. For that purpose, I just recalled our ambassador from the U.S., and he will be replaced by a very competent and very experienced ambassador who will work hard on making sure that our two nations are getting closer. I would also like and hope to see him having your trust and your confidence and your personal relations with you, so we can cooperate even more so. I will personally tell you that one of my assistants spoke to Mr. Giuliani just recently, and we're hoping very much that Mr. Giuliani will be able to travel to Ukraine, and we will meet once he comes to Ukraine. So, I mean, Zelensky is the guy who's bringing up Giuliani.
Right.
It wasn't
because
like Trump
Giuliani's
brought up Giuliani. And by the way, why is Giuliani
exactly? Why the fuck is he even involved?
Why is Giuliani involved in any of this? Giuliani is a guy who's like, I heard he was falling asleep during meetings and briefings. I mean, I don't want to be. There's plenty of old guys around Giuliani's age who are competent and all that, but I don't think Giuliani's one of them.
Well, I mean, Giuliani was the one that's peddling the conspiracy theory that the CTO of CrowdStrike was Ukrainian, which is false. So he's the one that's got the president's ear on this one for sure.
I just wanted to assure you that once again, you have nobody but friends around us, and I will make sure that I surround myself with the best and most experienced people. I also want to tell you that we are friends. We're great friends. And you, Mr. President, have friends in our country, so we can continue our strategic partnership. I also plan to surround myself with great people. In addition to that investigation, I guarantee, as the President of Ukraine, that all the investigations will be done openly and candidly. That I can assure you.
All right, so he's saying, I'm down, I'm playing ball, we'll do the investigation. So what does the president say? So Trump goes, good, because I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and he was shut down, and that's really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that, the way they shut down your very good prosecutor down, and you had some very bad people involved. Mr. Giuliani is a highly respected man. He was the mayor of New York City, a great mayor, and I would like him to call you. I will ask him to call you along with the Attorney General. Rudy very much knows what's happening, and he's a very capable guy. If you could speak with him, that would be great. The former ambassador of the United States, the woman, was bad news, and the people she dealt with in the Ukraine were bad news. So I want to let you know that. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, ... it sounds horrible to me.
All right, so there's two very important things that I want to talk about in this section, because these are two actual important things that people should know about the entire. Because Fox News covers it correctly, but Fox News covers this for political reasons because they are the right-wing Republican news outlet, and the other outlets are the DNC outlets. But Joe Biden is guilty of everything that Trump is being accused of. I just want to be very clear. Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. loans guaranteed if Ukrainian leaders did not fire the prosecutor that was investigating Hunter Biden's company. I'm talking in like the sales guy voice and my normal voice. And the company that he was investigating, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's youngest son, he was on the board of that energy company that was owned by a Ukrainian oligarch. And Joe Biden forced the government to fire the prosecutor that was investigating his son's company. And Joe Biden bragged about this. Joe Biden was bragging about this. So, and also, Joe Biden was also served as VP of the White House that sparked the coup in Ukraine. So, Joe Biden also leveraged USAID he leveraged USAID to get something out of it. And you can say that this prosecutor may have been corrupt, because I heard that he was actually a corrupt guy, but at the very least, he was investigating Biden's son's company, and that's a clear violation of interest, if you could say the least.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue against that, dude. Let fucking investigate Biden and Joe Biden, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden.
It's just like so. It's in the words of Danny Sherson, I think we're through the looking glass. It's fucking ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And anyone like, especially on the left side, and I'll call you guys out if you're making this fucking argument. If you think for a moment that it's okay that Biden did this, but it's not okay that Trump did this, you're flat out wrong. And I think we should have equal application of the law, and if there was wrongdoing there, we should absolutely do something about it. But that doesn't and shouldn't, right-leaning folks, take away from what Trump is doing here, right? This shouldn't be about a whataboutism, right? Because this is what that argument is. What about Hunter Biden? What about Joe Biden? Okay, cool. We'll deal with them too. But we're also dealing with Trump, and Trump is the current president right now, and this is what we're talking about here.
Well,
it doesn't take away from the wrongdoing.
There's one more thing I want to bring up in that paragraph. So, I want to talk about the former ambassador from the U.S. The woman was bad news, and the people she was dealing with in Ukraine were bad news. Yeah. So, who he's talking about is Victoria Nuland, right? And all right. This is going to be. Guess who her husband is?
I don't know.
Don't expect you to know right off the bat, but we recently did an episode a couple of weeks ago that heavily featured his writing.
I don't know. Hit me, man. We do a lot of episodes.
He's a member. He's a member of PNAC, and one of the authors of what the fuck? Why is this
Bill Crystal?
My name? What's that?
Billy Crystal?
Not Billy Crystal. Robert Kagan.
Oh, okay.
Robert Kagan is one of the nastiest, sleaziest neocons ever. He was part of the PNAC, one of the main think tank that basically put all the propaganda out there that get the U.S. or filter the propaganda in and out of the Pentagon to get the war into a war with Iraq. So that's her husband. I just want to point that out, that she is the neoconservatives go. And Victoria Nuland she served under the Obama administration. So neoconservatives are everywhere. They're not just in the Republican Party. They're in everywhere. They're attracted to power, not a political ideology besides power. And it's interesting because Victoria Nuland, so she was ambassador of Ukraine. Ambassadors are basically just spies. When you think about it, like Ambassador Ford to Syria, Ambassador Nuland to Ukraine, they both did the exact same thing. They were responsible for organizing riots and revolution within the country. She was one of the main engineers that invested $5 billion in riots to overthrow Yanukovych. And one of the major forces that were funded was the Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazi group that waged war on ethnic Russians. And here's another thing that's really interesting. Remember that guy who you liked Beto at one time? Remember how there was a guy who wanted to kill Beto O'Rourke?
Yeah.
Do you know where that guy trained?
Same place.
Azov Battalion. That's where he trained. Mm-hmm. That's where the guy. So it's. I just wanted to highlight who Victoria Nuland is because she goes overlooked in most of these conversations.
And I actually think she's going to be testifying, or has already testified before the impeachment inquiry. Actually, so interesting stuff.
Yeah.
That might be a point against the impeachment, but good context though. Nice catch.
So, all right, let's go.
All right, before we move on, just one point on this Hunter Biden thing. Look, I'm making the same argument that I made about CrowdStrike and Russiagate. If we play this out, and Zelensky finds out that there was no wrongdoing on Biden's part, like he gets a brand new prosecutor and they relitigate it, and they find out actually Joe Biden didn't do anything wrong, Hunter Biden didn't do anything wrong. There's no way he's going to ever say anything. He's not going to be like, "Oh, by the way, Biden, you're fine. You didn't do anything wrong." But he would definitely use this against Joe Biden, who at the time was the likely, winner of the 2020 election, primary that is. He would definitely use that as dirt against Biden. Like it's not even a question.
Of course, he's going to use this as dirt against Biden.
Of course,
this is turning into such a political jerk off. It's like going to end up being. But that's
dumb. But that's the whole linchpin of the impeachment inquiry. The impeachment inquiry is not whether or not it's okay, to withhold money, aid from a country. That happens all the time, as Mick Mulvaney points out. What is in question is whether he was doing it for personal gain. And in both of these situations, both CrowdStrike and this Hunter Biden thing, if you play this situation out and he gets what he would consider positive news reinforcing himself and his campaign, he's going to use that for himself. He's not talking about other corruption issues. And there are undoubtedly so many different things that he could be digging into to help the Ukraine with their corruption problem. But he's talking specifically about two things that would benefit him.
So let's keep on going on this.
Sure.
I wanted to tell you. All right. Well, I wanted to tell you about the prosecutor. First of all, I understand and I'm knowledgeable about the situation. Since we have won the absolute majority in our parliament, the next prosecutor general will be 100% my person, my candidate, who will be approved by the parliament, and will start as a new prosecutor in September. he or she will look into the situation specifically to the company that you mentioned in this issue. The issue of the investigation of the case is actually the issue making sure to restore honesty. So we'll take care. All right, this is not even really an important one. No. Or should I continue?
Honestly, those were the biggest points in there. The
rest of this transcript doesn't really matter, to be completely honest. I don't know if you caught anything, but the rest of it is just like, well, join me in Central Park. But those are the key parts that everyone's
freaking out about right now.
They're basing it off. And perfect time. Speaking of getting freaky, guys, let's take a quick moment to talk about sex. Good sex. Now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up, BlueChew.com. That's blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. So you know they work. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach. And since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill. So you can be ready whenever that opportunity arises, my brother. BlueChew.com. It works like a charm. I love it. It has improved my sex life, and I no longer have to make excuses like I used to. If you could benefit from extra function and more confidence where it counts, Blue Chew is the fast and easy way to enhance your performance. Most guys talk a good game, but Blue Chew helps you follow through. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor visits, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. And believe me, telling your doctor you need Viagra is very awkward, and you rather not do that. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code BRO, B-R-O. Just pay $5 shipping. Again, that's BLUE Chew.com, promo code BRO to try free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Thanks, Blue Chew.
Thank you, Blue Chew. You see with this podcast, you see, the types of things that we're trying to the advertisers we work with, we work with companies that give you knowledge, Blinkist, and work with companies that give you boners. So books and boners.
The two B's of life. The two B's of blue.
Books and boners.
Books, boners, and bro history.
Harder, smarter, and harder.
Work smarter and harder.
Work smarter and harder.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we got through this
transcript
thing. This transcript. So
boy, was that a doozy.
Does this prove? All right. So we're gonna record the second part of this episode tomorrow after the actual impeachment inquiry. But I just want to give you my initial thoughts on this. I don't think this proves. I don't think this is going to be a good move politically for the DNC to do this. I think this is going to end up backfiring in their face. One, because, all right, the Senate is not going to approve this, so he's not actually going to be removed from office. And if Joe Biden, the front runner right now, and I still think that Bernie Sanders is somehow going to squeak through. I don't know why. I just have a gut feeling. I could be totally wrong. This looks worse on Sanders. This will look worse on Biden and in a general election, because you're going to have the Democrats who hate Trump, which there's a lot of them. It's probably about half the country or so, maybe a little less when you counter independent voters who kind of like are a little different, or they don't have as much contempt as the mainstream Democrats. This is for the Democrats that absolutely hate Trump. These are going to be the ones who are going to be rallied to go to the voter box. But when it comes to a debate or a one-on-one election, Trump's going to be able to bash him on the head with this, because first of all, Joe Biden's history, Trump isn't guilty of anything that Joe Biden did in the presidential office. Because Joe Biden held aid over the head of Ukraine as well, if that is, the worst case scenario as far as what you're accusing Trump of. So I think this is going to be really bad for the Democrats if this goes through. And I know when we were having our last episode with Pratik, I'm so bad at
you got it right. You got it right.
Pratik, I'm so bad at pronouncing names. Pratik predicted that Trump is going to lose the election, and I was kind of like, I was kind of skeptical of what he was saying, but I did take what he did with a lot of merit just because of his background, and because I also know that he's pretty he's pretty objective the way he covers stuff. I don't think this hurts Trump in the long run politically. I think that this is going to actually help him.
Cool. Well, I obviously disagree on a number of those points. First of all, I just want to bring up Nixon, because that's he actually stepped down before they went before they went to vote, and a bit.
This is not even comparable to what Nixon did.
No. But well, maybe, I don't know. We don't have all the evidence
We're
yet.
talking about a we don't even know who the leaker. We don't even know who the person who leaked this information is.
Well, I think that's. I don't think that's necessarily important right now because.
Well, it's important because this is going to end up being. This is going into an impeachment trial, and it sounds almost.
Well, I don't think it's. Yeah, he has a right to know his accuser or whatever. Yeah, fine.
But under an impeachment,
here's the point.
This isn't.
It could have been me. Maybe I was the leaker. It doesn't matter. For one reason and one reason only. It's because now they're doing the impeachment, and a lot of people are corroborating this. And this is kind of the point that I wanted to talk about a little bit more. Just the actual inquiry itself. Because by my account, 21 people have been subpoenaed. 5 didn't comply. 1 is asking a judge whether he should comply, and 2 people got arrested already. And a lot of the suspicions that arose just from the transcripts are being corroborated by the testimony. And I brought up Nixon for a reason, and the reason why is because they televised those impeachment inquiries. They televised them asking those questions. And the reason why I think it will, it's not gonna whether he gets impeached or not is up for debate. I don't think I can make a projection on that because I don't know how the live impeachment inquiries will go. But what I can say is that it's certainly not going to help him, right? It's not going to help his case because part of the reason why the Mueller investigation went nowhere is because it was long, it was dragged out, it was done behind closed doors, and then he released a 400-page thing that nobody read, right? And with this, it's simple. We already have the transcript of the call. People are already formulating their opinions on it. And we're going to have the witnesses, the people who are involved in it, talk about it. And then people will decide. People will have an opportunity to decide for themselves in a format that's easily digestible, well, mostly digestible, which is a live showing. Now, let's talk a little bit about, just for the moment, about some of the people that got subpoenaed and some of the people who should be showing up to tomorrow, which is Wednesday, impeachment inquiry. So they tried to get Mike Pompeo on board. He didn't comply. He said that that the congressional inquiries have harassed and abused the State Department employees, and that he also said that he was going to do everything that was required by law without saying how long it would take. They tried to get Giuliani. Giuliani didn't comply. He said, let them hold me in contempt. We'll go to court. We'll challenge the contempt. The vice president, I should say, Mike Pence, was subpoenaed, and he said no, he's not. His deadline was October 15th. He didn't go. Kind of side point there, him not going to that could be used in a future, inquiry about evidence of obstruction, like him not actually showing up to that. And then we get to this guy, Mick Mulvaney, who I want to spend a little bit of time on. Do you know much about Mick Mulvaney?
I don't know that much about Mick Mulvaney. Please enlighten us.
Sure. Well, he's currently the acting White House chief of staff. He's some other cabinet member as well. He's doing a dual role there. But I think this is where a lot of people on the left, or just people in general, are kind of saying, aha, this was a quid pro quo. Because he basically said, yes, it was a quid pro quo. When he was asked, the question about did Trump withhold funding to Ukraine, to investigate the Democrats? And he kind of beat around the bush a little bit. He said ultimately, yeah, which, he said that the funding eventually flowed. And he said, by the way, there was a report that we were worried about the money it wouldn't pay out the money. If we didn't pay out the money, it would be illegal, okay? It would be unlawful. And then the guy follows up and says, to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. Funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happened as well. And this is what he said. He said, we We do that all the time with foreign policy. We're holding up money at the same time for, what was it, the Northern Triangle companies. We're holding up aid in the Northern Triangle companies so that they would change their policies on immigration. And I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy. I mean, so literally he said that we hold up foreign aid to get people to do things. That's something that we do. And that's something that they did. And the impeachment inquiry isn't asking, did you hold up aid? Because they did. That actually happened. Eventually, they got the money, but he did hold up the aid. The broader question there is whether he did so to benefit himself. And Mick Mulvaney just basically said, like, yes, we absolutely did hold up the money so that you can do the impeachment inquiry, so they can do the inquiry.
Bum, bum, bum. I don't know. It's just so par for the course. It's just hard for me to be outraged by it.
It's not a matter of outrage. I think it's just a supporting document.
I think the main thing that Trump is guilty of is just being retarded and making that for being fucking retarded. Like, why did he make that phone call in the first place is beyond me. Like, don't you have someone who can make that call for you? Why doesn't Giuliani just call him? Why didn't Giuliani just call Zaleski? Like, is he not smart enough to know that call is not, that he has so many enemies within the CIA and the intelligence agencies that he's going to get fucked, like, if he makes a call like that. He doesn't have the self-awareness that the conversation like that's going to come back to bite him in the ass. Another thing, which is interesting, and let's wrap this thing up because I got
one more guy to talk about before we wrap up, but sure. Okay.
Who do you want to talk
Gordon
about?
Gordon Sondland, but continue.
I want to talk about the guys who are, one of the main people who, Adam Schiff, who's spearheading the impeachment. I just want to give you some insight. Adam Schiff is a total war profiteer whose number one interest is to have a Cold War with Russia. He's a no-name congressman out of California who rakes in millions of dollars from Raytheon and the arms industry. And he is 100% interested in just keeping up an aggressive relationship with Russia because he is buddies. One of his main funders is a Ukrainian arms dealer. So Adam Schiff is totally invested in having a very bad relationship with Russia so he can make money through arms lobbies like Raytheon.
Shifty Schiff, whatever.
Adam, I just want to make that open about how that Adam Schiff he's just one of those compromised politicians, kind of like how I'll go into this later. I don't want to bring it up. I want to go on a rant about a certain Republican politician.
Lindsey Graham?
No, not Lindsey Graham. This is a very popular Republican politician. So we'll lose about 50% or maybe 20% of our listeners after I shit on this guy. But I'll shit on him at the end of the next episode.
Sure. All right. So I wanted to talk about Gordon Sondland for a second because I think he's important. So Gordon Sondland, he is the spy to the European Union, or that's what you call him, the ambassador to the European Union. He was scheduled to meet with the investigators on my birthday on October 7th, but the White House told him not to. He eventually did testify, and in his testimony, he said that he never had any indication that there was any quid pro quo or that we would be withholding aid to Ukraine. In exchange for the opening up investigations into both CrowdStrike and Hunter Biden. Later on, a bunch of people did testify. Among them was, let me get this right, Ambassador William Taylor, who did a pretty explosive testimony, at least according to the documents and to the Democrats, and he's also going to be testifying in an open session tomorrow. But after a bunch of people testified to the contrary of what Mr. Sondland said, what he did end up correcting his testimony. And what's really funny about it was that he ended up saying something to the tune of, yeah, I remember this one time where I spoke to a Ukrainian staffer and we told them that the aid would probably not get to them unless they opened the investigation into the corruption. And so what this guy, Gordon Sondland, and by the way, Gordon Sondland is a mega donor to Donald Trump. He's a huge Trumper, right? You know, his interests are in that camp. And what he's realizing now is that, like, shit, I got caught because a bunch of other people have already testified saying that this was a well-known thing, that before this call, the Ukrainians knew that we were going to withhold aid unless they did something about this CrowdStrike and Biden nonsense. And so William Taylor's going to be talking tomorrow in open court, I believe, and he'll be able to say the things that he has witnessed, that he has accounted for. And, you know, I don't think this is helpful for Trump, and I think what's going to be very difficult for Trump and people in his camp to get around is, you know, whether or not he actually did something for his own personal benefit, because there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to say that.
Well, we will see tomorrow. All right, let's go to a commercial break and continue the recording tomorrow so we can have this at a manageable time.
You bet.
All right.
Hey, Henry, it's Alex Jones. First, I just wanted to remind you to unplug your toasters. You never know when a globalist are listening. You always got to be careful. So, after many decades of research, I think I finally figured out what Soros is up to with his minions. So I discovered something called proton crystals. And these proton crystals are microscopic, so they're the size of a dust mite. Wait 1 second. Is that a tranny shaking his ass in front of a Little League game? Sorry about that. What these proton crystals are, they're little crystals that contain the fragments of the soul of Joseph Stalin. Soros is having his minions collect these proton crystals, and when they gather enough of them, they're going to be able to resurrect the Dark Lord, Joseph Stalin, and he's going to bring a new Bolshevik revolution in the United States of America. This is the truth why I was deplatformed. I was onto this from the very beginning. I need your help to stop this interdimensional portal from opening. When you get a chance, just give me a call back. And actually, don't give me a call back. Use your carrier pigeon. I'm being tracked. All right, bye.
So, oh boy, that was an interesting day. So, hopefully.
Wait a second. Wait. We're back.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. That, dude. Yeah. So hopefully this works out well, and after we edit this, it doesn't sound like shit. But a day has elapsed since we've recorded. Right, we recorded on the Tuesday. We had a plan to sit down and watch the impeachment inquiry. I want to preface at least my statements by saying that I was at work during the investigation here. So while I was listening to it in the background, my attention span had to obviously be elsewhere. Henry, I imagine the same was true for you.
Yeah, the same was true for me. I didn't really have a chance to dissect it. So in hindsight, maybe doing a podcast the following day, knowing that we wouldn't be able to listen to the entire thing, probably wasn't the smartest idea in the world.
Well, we can still try it anyway, see how it works out.
Well, I mean, you listened to way more than I did, so I from your, I guess, halfway attention span, what did you think? What were the major takeaways?
Yeah, so surprisingly, I have good and bad, feedback from it. So my first one is that what I'm getting out of the Republican side of the argumentation here is, that their biggest argument today was that none of this is firsthand testimony. Like Jim Jordan was very passionately talking about how, the testimony that these two folks, Taylor and Kent, that they were giving, that they've never even, they weren't the people that heard, Trump say anything. They weren't in the room when it happened. They didn't even meet the president. I think it was Taylor that has never actually met the president, which on the one hand, it's kind of a fair point, right? You know, I think it's totally fair to say, you know, should we trust secondhand or third-hand in certain cases testimony, you know, of what's going on? And I think that's a totally fair question to ask. My issue that I took with it is, why the fuck was Jim Jordan so goddamn angry? Why was he being such a dick to these guys? Because he was like very, very upset the entire time. And, you know, when you listen to any of the Democrats, and they have, I think, you know, equal reason to be upset, you know, especially if they believe that, you know, the president committed, you know, a crime. But it was like night and day as far as like,
well,
how
Jim
they
Jordan,
sounded.
Jim Jordan, his role is to be a hard ass.
Yeah, but
he's
why
like
is
that.
Why is that? That's not cool.
he is the Republican hard ass. In
He looks, dude. He looks like especially like the way he was dressed and like his disheveled hair and like his anger tone. Like I feel like he just stumbled out of a bar, right? Like he was like slightly hungover, didn't want to be there, and he's just like straight out yelling at the at the two people that were there. And I'm like, dude, chill out. You're like hurting your argument by sounding like a dick, you know? But you know, I thought that was fair, a fair line of questioning. But on the other hand, though, I will just kind of like undermine what I just said in saying that, you know, what these two are here for, and he kept calling them their star, you know, witness. They're star witnesses. You're the star witnesses, he said to them, you know. I think, you know, what's silly about this is that, you know, we go back into, there's a lot of Republicans that were bitching about the process of this whole thing. And frankly, you know, I think that the Democrats would absolutely fucking love to have those firsthand testimonies, to have people that would have had firsthand knowledge of the situation come testify. And they've subpoenaed them. A couple off the top of my head, you know, Mike Pompeo, Giuliani, Mike Pence, John Bolton, you know, all these people have firsthand account testimony of what's going on, and they've all been subpoenaed and they all ignored it, you know? So it's like, while it's totally fair to raise the question, in my opinion, should we be trusting the testimony of these career, you know, bureaucrats here? Fair, especially if they didn't have firsthand knowledge of it. But at the same time, the Democrats would love to talk to, you know, the firsthand witnesses, but they're not. They're either being told not to go by Trump's administration. And by the way, both William Taylor and Kent were instructed not to come, and the reason why they came is because they got subpoenaed. You know, I'd love to hear that testimony. So in my opinion, my feedback is they should have reversed this shit. They should have put the guys that are coming up on, I think it's Friday. So Sondland is coming on Friday, I think. And he'll be doing a testimony. And he has evidently firsthand accounts. He's the one that Taylor was referencing when he said that he heard him at a restaurant. One of his staffers heard him talking to Trump about the Ukraine deal. And he asked them, you know, how's the Ukraine thing going? And Sondland replied, oh, Trump only cares about Biden. That's all he cares about for Ukraine. And so it would be really great to just have that guy, Sondland, come on and talk about that, right? And he could totally just say, no, that's not the case. That's not what was said, whatever. And that would be perfectly fine, right? Perfectly fine by me. But the fact that, you know, we have these second and third hand witnesses here who, in my opinion, are credible in many ways. I think it hurt that flow. Like, I think they just put this in the wrong order. It should have been first-hand witnesses first, like Sondland, the people who they can get, and then have William Taylor and Kent follow it up to either corroborate or contradict that testimony. What do you think about that?
Dude, I'm going to be completely honest with you right now. I lost. Bandwidth is up on Ukraine Gate. I'll just be completely honest. The Ukraine Gate is up because it's just becoming the witnesses aren't credible type thing, going back and forth. We're not going to get anywhere with this. This is just going to be completely partisan.
But on that point though, so like, you know, okay, your bandwidth is up, but I'm going to just ask you the direct question, right? These two dudes who came on, legitimately, for many of the things that they testified about, they weren't first-hand accounts. They were second-hand or sometimes third-hand accounts. Do you think it would have been better for the Democrats or literally this inquiry to start with first-hand accounts and then go to second-hand accounts?
If I was running this, I would start out with the first-hand accounts, and then I would try to, I guess, validate the first-hand accounts with the second-hand accounts to add further verification and legitimacy to them.
Totally. Yeah, on that point, I totally agree with you.
If I was running a inquiry like this.
No, on that point, I totally agree with you, and for that reason, that was my negative criticism against it. They obviously also did testify quite a lot to the fact that about the timeline. They talked about this timeline a lot. One thing, and I want to just pull this up real fast because I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget. But Castro, what's not Julian Castro, but his brother? Do you remember what his name is?
Isn't it like Joaquim?
Joaquim, yeah,
Joaquim?
Yeah, I think it was Joaquim. So Joaquim Castro, the guy in the house, he was talking about, one of the lines of argumentation that came out of this was, okay, so he had this call, it was inappropriate, right? But we gave the money to them eventually, like we gave it to them, right? So no harm, no foul, right? And that was kind of like one of the other plays that was going on here from Jim Jordan. And what I saw in this was that, Joaquim Castro really hit the nail on the head, and this is something that I actually wanted to say in the last time we were recording, but I just couldn't find the words to say it, and I think he really encapsulated this a lot. And he said, he asked, I forget if it was William Taylor or Kent. He asked them, "Is attempted murder a crime?" And they both agreed, yes. Okay, is attempted, burglary or whatever a crime? They agree on that, right? And so is attempted, I don't know what the fuck he said, quid pro quo or whatever he's saying, is that a crime? And then they weren't able to answer the question. But I think that kind of really hits the nail on the head for me, at least when I look at this. And it's like, all right, if you look at the timeline, there was the aid that was withheld that happened before the call. There are some accounts that are saying that the Ukrainians knew about it beforehand, specifically Gordon Sondland, who straight up said in his revised testimony that he did tell a Ukrainian staffer that wouldn't flow until we get, an open confirmation that you're going to look into, corruption and Joe Biden and all that other shit. Then we have the phone call, and then the phone call happens, and then there's a whole shit show about it, and then a whistleblower, an unnamed whistleblower, who we still don't know who this is, comes out and says, hey, I don't think this is right, whatever. At that point, then we see a couple of things happening. We see the actual transcript of the call, or the quote-unquote transcript that we talked about. That gets locked down in a secret server and classified, and they eventually declassified it, but the first thing they did was classify it. Then they tried gaslighting it, and then we ended up getting the call transcript, and then it was a pretty stupid call because he literally did bring up Biden, and he brought up, a CrowdStrike. He wasn't talking about other corruption issues. So this is what kind of got him into some hot water, even though he thinks it was a perfect call. It was, whether you think that what he did was impeachable or not, like, it was a stupid fucking call, right? And that's what got him in hot water in the first place. And then they released the money, right? Then they went ahead and said, okay, go ahead, give him the money, right? And so this is like an attempted murder, right? In the sense that they planned it out, they got their shit in order, they were going to pull the trigger, and then someone caught them, and then they were like, oh, psych, nah, they put the gun away, and then they let the guy free. Now, in that case, in a court of law, attempted murder is still illegal. And I think that what's happening on one side is the Republicans are saying, because they've been shifting their goalposts. First they said it didn't happen at all, right? Then they said, okay, fine, it happened, but it wasn't that bad. It's definitely not impeachable, right? And then we got all these people corroborating the fact that he did do this thing, and that they only released the money after a whistleblower came out to, like, snitch on him. So the question is, like, all right, so you didn't do the crime but the attempt of the crime is also a crime. Do you follow that logic?
I'm kind of lost, Danny. I'm going to be completely honest.
Are you even listening, Henry? I feel like you're not.
I'm listening. I am listening to you.
I'll put it real simple.
So you're saying
attempted murder, is that a crime?
Attempted. I understand the logic you're using. Attempted murder. You're saying that the Trump administration they attempted to murder somebody.
They attempted to murder Ukraine.
You're saying. All right. So what you're saying is that the Trump administration's intended to withhold aid,
right?
But they didn't actually do it because they got caught doing it.
Exactly. And it's an open question about whether or not they would have continued to withhold that aid if they hadn't got caught. And
this is all proven from that transcript, from the whistleblower's transcript, not even the full transcript.
Well, what it's proven by is the timeline of events that we know the facts for, right? We know when they withheld the aid, and that was before the call. We have Gordon Sondland's testimony that he did speak with Ukrainian officials before the call about, hey, this isn't going to happen unless you actually play ball. We know when the call happened, and we know when the whistleblower put out that whistleblower account, and then we know after that the aid was released back to Ukraine. So that's the order of events that it actually happened in. And you can pick at individual testimonies, and you can say, hey, that's second hand, third hand, fourth hand, or whatever. But those are the actual chronological series of events that it actually happened in. So it follows that, at least in my opinion, and definitely in Joaquin Castro's, that there was an attempt to do something wrong, and he got caught. And so they decided not to do the wrong thing. We were supposed to pat him on the back, good job for not doing the wrong thing.
What is this, pre-crime? You ever see the movie Minority Report, or is it Majority Report?
It's Minority Report, right?
Majority Report is...
And that's when they, psychically can see that you're about to do a crime, and they, go and arrest you before you do it. No, yeah. It's not the Minority Report, but, in the example, attempted murder is still a crime. Attempted burglary is still a crime. Why wouldn't attempted extortion be a crime?
Yeah, I just feel like there's not enough proof from that transcript that he was going to withhold it, and I just don't think all the evidence adds up.
Yeah, you're right, and there's still a lot of big missing pieces, and that's why I got really upset about the format of this, because it's you should have started with the first-hand accounts,
and I don't. So first,
because I think that would give more evidence of what's going on.
And I was going to give you my grand take. So, as the fucking siren is coming back, you can probably hear it. Guys who are new to this podcast, this is a daily problem that we face. Every single episode, the sirens come. And we can't do anything about it. It's actually gotten worse, so let me tell you. So we record out of a very high-tech studio, and they installed brackets into my windows, my bedroom window where I record the show, and they
look, it's getting even louder here.
These fucking brackets that hold the AC so it doesn't fall. So I can't remove the AC out since summer, and now it's fucking 30 degrees out in November. So the noise is louder now. Just a side note of why there's sirens in the background, and everyone who's been listening you probably hate hearing this. All right, so my grand take is that, first of all, we should never have been giving you aid to Ukraine in the first place. So I wish we stopped giving you aid to Ukraine. Second, this transcript, this doesn't sound like the smoking gun of what he's even being accused of. And third, and I'll make the Nick Mulvaney point, this sort of shit happens on a regular basis from the executive office. Of course they
should it though?
Of course they well, I mean, it shouldn't happen, but it does happen.
Okay, so let's put a stop to it. How about that? Let's put a stop to that practice. If we agree that it shouldn't happen, let's stop that practice. And let's adjudicate everyone
But here's the thing, Danny. I would be 100% fine with even if you wanted to impeach Trump for what he has did. Let's just say the call in itself, which I agree was very inappropriate and really stupid of Trump to do in the first place, to call Zelensky and have that conversation about Hunter Biden and the crowd strike and even mention aid and all that stuff. It was really, really stupid for him to do. I don't understand. What was he thinking? Did he not think that someone was going to leak that? I don't think he even knew it was wrong, to be completely honest.
He didn't.
I don't
think he did either. Yeah.
I don't think he knew that it was even like an offensive thing. I think he thinks that's part of the executive power. It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm giving aid. Like to him, he's giving the aid. But if you were going to impeach him over something like that, I would be completely down to have those very strict rules for the executive office if it was applied to every single president going forward.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you.
I would be fine with applying these very strict restrictions on what the executive branch can do and what the president can do.
Yeah.
In regards to anything foreign policy. However, you can see how a Republican or a conservative or anyone who's pro-Trump or just not a Democrat is going to look at that and saying, this is just a hit job on something that presidents do all the time, and they're just using this as an excuse to get rid of Trump because they hate him. And the big moral of the story is that Democrats can do whatever they want. Hunter Biden can do whatever he wants. He can do coke and fuck whores in the Ukraine. And that's just the way it is. Democrats have, they have the open right to fool around and do scandals because the media is never going to cover it. And, I don't believe that. I'm just saying that's the
talking point there.
That's a talking point, and you can't blame conservatives and Republicans for thinking that. I mean, you can put the shoe on the other foot, and if you go back into the 90s, I mean, the same sort of thing happened with Clinton when he was impeached.
Right. They were looking at Whitewater, right? Like allegations about like some misdoings on Whitewater, and then they found out he got his dick sucked in the Oval Office, and they were like, "Aha, we got you!" You know. So like
and that was all political.
But essentially the same thing is not essentially, but a similar thing is happening now, right? And the shoe's on the other foot here, and they're fucking. I think that the right here is just being a baby about it. Like the Democrats are playing by the rules, by the way, that were enacted by a Republican-controlled Congress, headed by fucking Boehner. Back when Obama was still president. So it sucks for you, dude. Like we're here. They voted on it. Like they didn't have to vote on it, and they voted on it. And now, they obviously it was a partisan win to do the impeachment inquiry, but they voted on it, which wasn't even in the rules, and they were asking for it. Now we did it. They're having the inquiries live on TV, which they didn't have to do, but they capitulated and did it anyway. I think this is like, if you're gonna bitch about the process and you're gonna bitch that this is all partisan infighting, like. Kind of did this to themselves. Trump did something stupid, and they set up the rules by which we can catch him.
They didn't do it to themselves. Like, I think so. Like it was a dumb thing for Trump to do, but it was because he has very malign, vicious enemies in the DNC as well as insiders and the CIA and the intelligence agencies. This is something that. The Trump administration, there's a microscope on everything that they do. He should realize that.
Honestly, there should be a microscope on every administration.
No, there should be a microscope on everything. But the thing is, though, is that microscope is not like this fair, just media. It's not like this honest muckracker who's like really exposing corruption and doesn't have any interest other than telling the truth. The people that have the microscope on them are people in the bureaucracy, aka the deep state. I mean, you can't even call the CIA a bureaucracy. I
don't know, man. I think you're painting with a really broad brush there.
They're America's secret police.
I think you're painting with a really broad brush there to say that everyone that's concerned about this allegation of corruption.
I'm not painting everyone who's concerned about it.
Even all of the CIA or all of the FBI or all the intelligence agency people. Like, now we're talking in conspiracy theory language, right? We don't have concrete statistics on how many people in the CIA are corrupt and out to get Trump. That's not a data point.
It's a handful. It's not everyone.
Yeah.
Not everyone in the CIA is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of CIA guys or intelligence guys that don't like this type of activity.
Right.
But there's also a handful of people who absolutely, they live on this. That's their job, to cause chaos.
Sure, but I don't think that using that as a linchpin to say that all of this is bullshit because of 2 or 3 or X number of X percent of people.
I'm not saying it's all bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that it is. That this is just I
think it's totally fair to, like you said, put the microscope on literally everything Trump does, but everything any president does. If back to Mick Mulvaney, we do this all the time. It's okay, dude, let's not do that all the time. That's
But there's
wrong.
an extra big microscope on the Trump administration.
I don't know, dude. There's just as big as a microscope on the Obama administration.
No, there's not.
Yeah,
there's no way.
Yeah, there was.
There
dude.
weren't these leaks coming in the Obama administration.
Yeah, was,
people
bro.
leaking every single day. Are you kidding me? There's no way the media how did the media cover Obama? Look at the contrast between how the media covered Barack Obama and how the media covered Donald Trump. And Barack Obama, as well spoken as he was,
depends on which media you were looking at.
He had his big share of scandals. He had his share of scandals.
Absolutely.
If you look at not just Fox News, if you look at some good journalists on the left, they've actually covered Obama's presidency, and they covered a lot of the bad things that he did, like killing American citizens, like arming, like expanding the warfare state, by removing Gaddafi from power, arming Salafists in Syria.
Okay, what's your point?
My point is that the media did treat Barack Obama with kid gloves, and they still do. They still look at Barack Obama as this great guy.
It depends on which media you're looking at, because if you watched any of Fox News, it was every day
you're comparing
the world
one
was
news outlet. You're comparing one news outlet. You're comparing Fox News is one news outlet. Every other news outlet is the mainstream press, and Fox News is the mainstream press as well. They're just bent. They just their target market are baby boomer conservatives. But every other news outlet, CNN, MSNBC, Huffington Post, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Politico, every single major big news organization is extremely tough on Trump. They have a huge microscope on them, and they live on this story of the Trump is this evil authoritarian dictator.
I'll play ball for a second. Let's assume you're correct.
Comparing the media treatment of Trump and Obama is not even on the same level.
I'll play ball for a second. Hold on. Let's assume you're correct, right? Why? Why do they have the bigger microscope on Trump?
Well, I think it's because when he was first running, he started talking about moving troops out of Syria, and then he started talking about populist politics and nationalist politics. I think that's one big reason. Another big reason is just because he's frankly very crude. Another reason is that he's a Republican. There's a lot of reasons why the media hates Trump.
What about being a Republican gives you a bigger?
It just gives
microscope?
you
Just out of curiosity.
Being a Republican, and I'm telling you, I am. If Republicans are treated a lot more harshly in the media than Democrats are. Overall, they absolutely are, and I'm not even a Republican. I'm not saying this as like some Republican victim crier who was like, "Oh, all the Democrats hate us so much." They are treated a lot less fairly by the media than how Democrats are treated.
It just begs the question. I disagree. I disagree with you, but why? Why would they treat Republicans worse? Why?
Because a lot of liberal Democrats. Well, if you want to talk about the people who are first of all writing the stories, why the media who's writing the stories, most journalists are from big cities, from the coast. They fall into these echo chambers, and they just have this ideology where I don't want to blame it on ideology because that's giving it too much credit, but it's mostly left-wing people or liberal people who are getting into journalism, who are becoming the journalists, and they create these echo chambers that are really removed from the rest of America. Like most of the big media hubs are not located in Wichita, Kansas. They're located in New York and Los Angeles. So naturally, they're going to have a left-wing bias.
Okay, I mean, like, I still disagree with you, but on that point, like I have a different take on that.
You cannot deny the mainstream media does not have a left-wing bias.
No, I don't think they have a left-wing bias. Here's what I think they have.
I think they have a left-wing bias.
I think they have a money bias. And here's the thing. I think that the media, they are corporations. They're not independent. They're for profit, right? And I think they will print and write and have the bent of whatever it is that they believe will sell the most. Like, sensationalism in the media is rampant everywhere. I think on that point we can both agree. And I think that they're printing whatever it is that they think that the American people want to consume, right? Take it at however you want, right? That begs the question, if American people want to consume media that has a left-wing bent, what does that tell you about American people?
Dude, but it's not in touch with everyone in America. The country is split between people who are, first of all, most people aren't super political. They're not super right wing or super left wing. They're pretty much middle in the road. That's the majority of people.
If that were true,
why on the right, you got 20% of people on the left.
If that were true, why wouldn't they print? If that were true, if the majority, because I think I agree with you in the fact that most people aren't very political, right? You got these polar extremes like the 20% caps, and then the rest of the 60% is stuck somewhere in the middle. I totally agree with you on that one. But the point is that these are companies, and they want to make money, right? And if they were smart and they wanted to make the most amount of money, wouldn't that beg the question that they should print middle of the road shit, because that's the type of media that the people would want to read.
But that middle of the road objective journalism doesn't sell, so they do put out that left wing stuff, or the left wing journalists are pushing out more left wing stories because sensationalism is what actually sells and pushes stories. Like, listen, for example, if I go on Twitter and if I look at all the articles that are pushed by Twitter, all of them are by Huffington Post or, you know, a Politico type or a Salon type or a Vox or a Slate magazine. I have to read through 5 pretty liberal publications before I find a Fox News publication. And Fox News that's just like mainstream conservatism. It's not anything crazy. So I have to go, like, if you type in any article, you're usually going to find like the 5 left-wing articles before you find a conservative one. So it's just the way that media is consumed, like the way that media is presented by big tech companies. Like, most people who work in big tech are politically on the left. Most people in journalism are politically on the left. So it's going to make sense when a lot of stories that,
but here's
maybe
the
not
thing,
all the stories that are published, but all the stories that are given priority or boosted are mainly left-wing stories.
All right, but on Twitter, people submit that stuff. A human being submits it. You know, it's not like Twitter says, here's the news that you need to read. Somebody goes on Twitter and says, I read this article, or maybe they didn't and just fucking read the headline, which is most likely the case, and they post that shit. Right? It's people who are posting those things, not Facebook, not Twitter. People are posting those things.
I go on Twitter, and the Twitter highlight will be everyone's talking about culture appropriation. Oh, like this high school senior wore an Asian dress, and the conversation is about culture appropriation. What? Who cares about that? Like, who honestly was like, wow. Most of the people who actually cared and got a reaction out of that were people who are on the right wing, who were like, this is complete baloney.
And correct me if I'm wrong, who posted that? Who posted the news article about that? Who brought that up? Was that Twitter?
I don't know.
Or was that
a person?
It
was due to the Twitter hashtags. It was like what was trending. It was what was trending, and then Twitter.
All right, so people are doing this hashtag, right? A plurality of people are doing it, and their algorithm picks up the fact that, hey, a bunch of people are talking about this. So it still comes down to the people that are doing this, right? So we have two big veins of argument here. One of them is that there's this liberal bent in the mainstream media, and the other one is that, you know, these tech companies are promoting a liberal bent, right? But
at least on the
tech side, it's user generated. So either mostly liberals are on Twitter, which could be a case, right? Or that's what people are talking about, like objectively. And the people who are writing the media that these people on Twitter are sharing and hashtagging are writing it because people are consuming that media.
Here's an example. So if I go every single late night talk show host, so Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, who's the other guy? Jim Jeffries, does he count as one? Is he a late night talk show host?
Yeah.
Who's the British guy on HBO? Oliver something?
John Oliver.
Trevor Noah.
You forgot.
Trevor Noah. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them is a liberal.
And
is a liberal. This is comedy. On every single network with a late night talk show, every single one is hosted by a liberal. Who else is there? The guy on SNL, Seth Meyers, is that his name?
Yeah. Seth Meyers.
There is not one conservative guy who's on any of those shows.
I would love to see a funny conservative one. Honestly,
there's no conservative on a CBS or ABC or whatever mainstream cable network or corporate network. There's not one guy
Can you name a really funny conservative comedian that you think would do a really good job at like a late night show with a conservative bent?
There's a lot of funny conservative comedians, but a lot of them are not as well known, or a lot of them are very stigmatized because
I would love to listen to this. Like, honestly, Bro History listeners, if you're still listening by this point and you haven't given up on us yet, like, honestly, hit me up on Twitter, send me some funny conservative comedians. I would love to hear this perspective. Like, honestly, like, no, not being facetious at all. Like, I'm trying my hardest to break out of the bubble. I want to know. I'd love to see that.
Adam Carolla is a conservative comedian. He hosted the Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, I remember that. Right.
He's
Why didn't he get a show? Because he's a conservative.
I don't know, because he wasn't cable news material. I don't know the full story of his career and how those shows are handed out. But there isn't. It doesn't. Not even. All right. It's not even a point where you have to be conservative or not. I'm just saying there's like no one who's not like anti-Trump. Shits on Republicans. Like that's like that's par for the course with pretty much every single like late night talk show.
And how are their ratings?
All liberal. Their ratings, I don't know what their ratings are. I don't check them or really watch them. I'm just saying
pretty good.
What's that?
They're pretty good.
What do you mean?
Their ratings are pretty good.
I'm sure their ratings are pretty good, but I'm just saying that is the status quo of the type of personality and a type of point of view that most mainstream outlets are presenting.
Yeah,
you're not going to see a guy like I'm trying to think of like a middle of the road person who doesn't talk about politics, but I don't think that is sexy enough for most people to like not talk about politics.
Because like, let's
Jimmy
be real,
Kimmel
like
doesn't. Not Jimmy Kimmel.
Like, imagine
Jimmy Kimmel. How many times did Jimmy Kimmel go on air and talk about fucking gun control and talk about universal health care? Like, how many times did he lecture America? That's Jimmy Kimmel on ABC. Supposed to be pretty isn't he supposed to be nonpartisan, not bending right, not bending left? But meanwhile, he's giving lectures about.
I don't actually know what the rules are or like the setup is for late night shows. I think they're kind of like funny op-eds commentating on the news.
They're funny op-eds, but they all represent the same mainstream like left wing. And I apologize, I don't mean to like say negative things about like leftists or anything like that or progressives. When I say left wing, I mean like this generic left wing corporate liberal neoliberal type of point of view. I'm not trying to talk shit about progressives right here. It's a lot of the progressive stuff.
I just think it comes out. I just think it's like a chicken and the egg thing here, man. I don't think that these people would be successful. I don't think that these news outlets would be successful if they were printing shit that was completely against the zeitgeist, right? That were completely against what people want to consume, because we're in a capitalist society, and like honestly, if most people were conservative, or even in this case, like when we both agree that most people are middle of the road, if most people were middle of the road,
we're
should
not
follow.
in a totally capitalist society, though. There's a lot of interference between government and state. Like
are you suggesting that the government is the one that's promoting like these media networks to do liberal shit? Because that's a stretch, man.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's a lot of crossover between people on different boards who are connected to the government. And there's a lot of
you'd have to show me the documents on that one, because I can't buy that just yet.
I can definitely dig up proof, and I've been wanting to do an episode that shows that heads of like board members of corporate news outlets are on the same boards of arms industries.
I'd love to. Honestly,
I'll be able to pull that.
Instruct me.
I don't want to get into that right now, but I'll 100% be able to pull that up, and we can do an entire episode on the collusion between the media and the MIC.
No collusion.
No, there absolutely is a collusion between the MIC and media, and this is even going off point. Here's something that all media outlets, all mainstream news outlets have exactly the same. They all promote war. War sells.
Promote war?
Yes, they absolutely do. All the mainstream news outlets, they all promote war.
We'll have to talk about that in more detail, I think, in another episode.
They all promote the mainstream U.S. foreign policy decisions. They all promote.
Well, okay.
They all cheered us into the Iraq War.
I'll give you that. I'll fucking give you that.
They all cheered us in. They didn't push back on Libya. They didn't push back on Syria. They don't push back in any war. They criticized Trump for he didn't actually say Trump didn't actually officially withdraw all those troops. Now he's talking about
sending them back for the oil.
Heading them back for the oil. And by the way, this is a side note right now, because I did want to talk about this subject, but we don't really have too much time. So this oil thing with Syria, him wanting to steal oil.
Right.
So stealing oil is more expensive than producing it yourself.
Yeah, it totally is.
The absurdity of, like, what do these people think, that they're going to jack a pipeline in the middle of the sand and have that
all
go
the way back to, like,
across
New York or
the Atlantic into a Texas oil refinery?
Yeah.
That is so insane.
Yeah.
What they're doing right now with the Syria with oil, these oil fields, is that they're trying to prevent Syria from producing oil. They're not trying to steal the oil. They're trying to keep Syria from being able to process oil, and produce
their
oil,
own
and
oil.
export oil. And they don't. In Syria, anyone who knows anything about Syria knows that Syria produces like $20 million worth, or it's like $20 to $50 million worth of oil in like
nothing.
a month. Nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
Right.
They only have enough oil supply to actually power their own domestic economy.
Right.
The whole reason why they're doing this is because they want Iran have to dish out welfare and aid to Syria to weaken Iran's position. So Syria is completely that they're just kind of like a dead man hanging on to Iran. That's the whole reason why they're doing that.
Right. But that would be considered a pretty big intervention, though. So, you know.
All right, we'll do that, and I can get the documents.
I got the documents right here.
I have the documents right now that shows that will show this. So
let's maybe wrap it there. I think that's a good place to stop. We'll keep following some of this shit. You know, if it gets hot again, and you guys listen to and rate this episode, maybe we'll do one more thing. Force Henry to do it again.
One more thing. Speaking of Syria, so the leader of the White Helmets,
he just died. Yeah,
he fell out of a window.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Or at least it sounds like bullshit. Like who falls out of a window? What was he doing?
Who the hell?
Did he slip on a banana peel or something like that? Like what happened?
I don't know.
Hey, what happened to Tony? Oh, yeah, he fell out a window.
Yeah, he got hurt. He fell out of a window.
Yeah, you know, it's a shame what happened to him, you know, falling out a window like that.
It's probably Turkish intelligence getting tired of him. Do you know what would be funny?
What?
If it was the Crown Prince.
Oh, God. MBS?
It was the Crown Prince again.
Probably was.
Everyone, thanks for listening to this. Rate and review the podcast. We are, as we record this, we're at 199 reviews. So we're almost at 200, which would be pretty awesome for you guys to rate it and get us there. Thanks for bearing with us, all the feedback. We love you all. Danny, any last words?
No collusion.
Collusion. Show me the transcripts, Hillary.
I don't give a damn about her emails.
Okay. Peace.